O- Okay, everybody, thank you so much for joining this meeting. I'm Fabrizio Nastri. I'm the CEO and founder of FlexUp. So FlexUp missions is to basically help businesses, startups, but also larger companies or very early stage founders to structure their business and to manage it in a way that simplifies a lot of the traditional challenges that businesses face, with a focus on encouraging collaboration between all the stakeholders, including the founders, the investors, and the employees, the partners, the clients. So we've designed an economic system that allows a very simple and equitable way to share the risk and the profits of a business. And we're also developing all the tools to help entrepreneurs and businesses in that process, which includes a very detailed, structured legal framework that allows you to automatically generate contracts for typical business problems, such as an agent or an equity remuneration system for employees or whatever. And we also have an ERP, basically a business management app that allows you to manage your business, your contracts, your invoices, your payment, and also to calculate the equity of the different stakeholders. One of the core principles of the FlexUp system is the principle of non-discrimination. So there is no difference between an employee, a founder, an investor, a partner. So sometimes we are discussing with some people and they say, well, do you want to join the team and be a full-time member of the team, or do you want to be a partner with more of a consultant role? And sometimes you help us to develop our own project, or sometimes you provide advisory services to other companies. And the answer that FlexUp has for these questions is it doesn't really matter. It's the same, basically. It's very flexible. So there is no hard border between I'm an employee and I'm an external partner. It's kind of a gradual different levels of intensity of collaboration. But in all cases, the stakeholders, the parties that join a project, that participate in a way or another, that contribute to a project, they can earn equity, they can be paid with a mix of cash and equity. So we have this legal framework, we have this business management app, and then we're building a network of people who understand how FlexUp works and can provide support, advisory services, or even more hands-on operational support to whatever business wants to use the FlexUp approach to develop their activity. So that's FlexUp in a nutshell. However, FlexUp is a lot of things to many different types of situations. So the best way to understand what FlexUp is to look at specific examples. And that's why we organize these workshops, so that different entrepreneurs, different people that face or have business projects, they can share with us their specific situation. And then more in a brainstorming, improvised discussion mode, we look at how FlexUp can help you develop your business, develop your activity in a wide range of different situations. So today we have, I guess, two new people joining the call. We have Steven and Jacobian. And if you're okay, we could discuss a little bit the projects or the opportunities you're looking at and see how FlexUp can help you structure them. So maybe if that's okay, Steven, we could start with your project, and then we can brainstorm a little bit. And then Jacobian, if you're interested, then you can also share a bit about what you're envisaging. Is that okay? Okay,
Yeah,
please,
okay.
Steven,
So I
tell
can
us a
start.
little bit about you and about your project.
Okay. So, hi everyone, my name is Steven. So, I operate in the renewable energy industry. So, I have been operating in this industry for over 8 years now across two continents, Europe and Africa. And actually, I'm building a CNI for commercial and industrial solar development company in Francophone West Africa, so mainly in Côte d'Ivoire, Benin, and Senegal. So the idea is through an ALCO company which will be based in Mauritius to develop SPVs for each project that I have in those targeting countries. So actually, I have a pipeline of 6 megawatts of project identified in Ivory Coast, and I'm working with an EPC for engineering procurement construction company that will help me to deploy those solar solutions with those industrial customers that I have identified in Ivory Coast. So actually, I know very well Fabrizio, and we discussed this several times. He's very familiar with the solar PV industry also as well, and he knows the specificity of the African market because it's very difficult to operate in those complex environments, whether it is in terms of financing, operating system. And this is where I came across the solution of FlexUp, and it caught my attention. And the idea for me is to see if through FlexUp I can be able to manage my different SPVs across those different countries. And this is actually what I'm looking for to see how you have been able to improve the solution and how you can help me on the legal part, I would say, because this is a huge part to structure this organization. So through the HoldCo in Mauritius and the SPVs in Ivory Coast. So basically that's it.
That's a very, very interesting example. So I mean, of course, as you said, I've worked on solar projects in Africa many years. So I'm familiar with the situation, but for those people who are in this call or watching this video, some of the aspects of what Stephen described may not be very familiar. So let me try to summarize and recapture the situation as I understand it, and then Stephen, you can correct me if I'm wrong.
Yeah.
So basically, Stephen is a solar project developer. That means that he initiates a solar project. So he will look for a piece of land where he can build a solar plant. He's going to, of course, talk to the authorities to get authorization to build a plant. Maybe you need some environmental impact assessment, so you need to hire different types of experts and consulting firms that will do assessments, whether technical evaluation or environmental impact assessment. He needs to talk to the national energy company that will buy the electricity, or because he mentioned CNI, commercial and industrial. Exactly.
So I will not
he's
work
actually, you're not working with the government. Okay, so you're working directly with large industrial players or large clients, commercial players that need the energy. So the developing a solar project is a little bit like a real estate developer. So sometimes you spend several years trying to develop the whole project. So you're looking for the partners, you're looking for the clients, you're looking for the technical solution. That is a lot of work, and it can be very costly, and often it's very risky. And very often the developer is alone taking all of these risks. I know this because I was a solar project developer for 8 years, and eventually we went bankrupt. And that's one of the reasons I developed FlexUp, because I realized that if you're taking all these risks alone and nobody else has basically shares with you the risk and the profits, the risk is that you don't have anyone else who's helping you push this forward. So it can be a very difficult situation. So one of the ideas of FlexUp, specifically for solar projects, is how can I get my partners to have skin in the game? That means that maybe they share with me some of the costs and the risks, and in return, they will share some of the profits. So a couple of clarifying questions. You say that you, of course, want to target several different clients. Do you envisage to have one SPV for each project, or do you envisage having one SPV for a portfolio of projects in the same country and the same configuration?
A very interesting question. The first approach is to build a separate SPV for each project. But actually, I'm working on a project with an industrial company based in Ivory Coast, and they have three separate sites where they want to build solar power plants on their rooftop. And the idea is to gather those three projects under one SPV. So I think I will have, and I need to have an hybrid approach regarding this, depending on the customer that I'm addressing.
Okay. Another question, you mentioned you're working with EPC, so it's a technical term. It's a company that does the engineering, the procurement, and the construction. So the EPC company is the one that will actually build the plant.
Yeah.
Do you want to establish, are you thinking about establishing a strategic partnership with an EPC that can work for you with you on several projects? Or for each project, you will do a bidding process and select the best offer?
So actually, I have been working with those two EPCs for more than 4 years now. So I know them very well. So the idea would be to work exclusively with them because they are bringing the pipeline to me. So I think it's going to be easier to grow up and scale the business starting from that. But I'm not close to the possibility of having a general tenders with other EPCs in Ivory Coast.
Yeah. So, okay, let me now throw some ideas here on the table. And again, this is not a prescription, it's just a brainstorming, okay?
Yeah.
And I will talk about a little bit about from experience. So one of the mistakes that I did when I was developing solar projects in France is I said, okay, I need each project to be in a separate SPV. So because I want to develop a lot of projects, I'm going to create a lot of SPV. SPV is a special purpose vehicle. It's basically you create a new legal entity and you spend money. And I created 35 SPVs immediately. And for each company, I had to pay an accountant, I had to pay a lawyer to do a lot of paperwork. Basically, it was costing me, after a few years, hundreds of thousands of euros because I had created all of these empty companies waiting for a project to be injected in it, right? So the idea to create an SPV very early on in the process, in my case, turned out to be a bad idea because it cost me a lot of money and most of these SPVs were never used, actually. But I was still paying 2,000 euros a year for the accountant and many other expenses. One thing that we did do, which was actually very successful, is at some stage we had one SPV which had 30 projects inside it. And it was the same EPC doing all of them.
Okay.
So all the projects had exactly the same contract, had exactly the same guarantees. They had the same technical partners, but of course, each was on a different location with different landlord. At the time, we were building warehouses for animals, for cows with solar roof. We call that stabulation. And we had about 35 stabulation within one portfolio. The benefit is it was a very attractive portfolio once it was built, and we could refinance it very easily, right? Because from an investor point of view, the industrial risk is diversified because you have separate plants. So if there's a problem in one plant, it's compensated by the others. But the counterparty risk is very limited because there's only one EPC, there's only one developer that is the counterparty for all of the projects. So I found that for me, it worked well to have a single SPV for several projects. The other thing that worked very well is that we created a joint venture company with, at the time, one of the biggest solar panel manufacturer. And we, at the time, I didn't have FlexUp. So I said, we create a legal entity. We are 50-50 shareholders. And the panel manufacturer, he would basically provide the panels as a loan. Basically, he would fund the construction of the plant up to 50% by providing the panels. and the other 50% by providing additional cash as a loan. And we would share the profits 50-50. So it wasn't implemented using the FlexUp system, but the idea was already there. So I think what you could do is, and again, I'm brainstorming and we need to explore this further, but you could create a general portfolio company in each country.
Okay.
For example, you create one in Ivory Coast. So all the construction permits and all the contracts that you sign is with the SPV, this holding company, and you can have several projects inside it. I think that would save your cost. Now, if you, for each project, have a separate group of partners, for example, you do like 5 projects with one EPC company, and then 5 projects with another EPC company, and you want them to share the risks and the profits of this sub-portfolio, then with the FlexUp system, you don't need to create a separate SPV for that subset, for that sub-portfolio. You can just create what we call a sub-account. And now, for each sub-account, you sign all the contracts, and every party will see how much money they have invested, and when that sub-portfolio starts generating profits, they get their share, right? So you can calculate how you split the equity within a sub-account. So let's say you have 20 projects, 20 solar projects in Ivory Coast. Because you are operating under the local legislation, you will need to create a legal entity in Ivory Coast, even if the mother company is in Mauritius. You need to create an SPV in Ivory Coast. You will sign all the contracts. So this SPV will be signing all the contracts, will be getting the construction permits, will be getting the grid connection. But from a business point of view, from an economic point of view, you can create sub-accounts with different portfolios of projects. Even you can go to the individual account. So let's say you have a commercial player and you do the business plan and you say, okay, we're going to work with you. And I think this is potentially a very attractive business proposition. You go and see a commercial client and you say, well, based on our business plan, I think that the electricity will cost you 100 euros per megawatt hour. I'm going to do this project completely open book with you. And maybe your target is to get 80 euros per megawatt hour, but I ask you to pay 100. So that we know that the project is going to be financially viable, financially very profitable. So I can attract some investors and I can get a loan from a bank on a very good terms because I know the project is very profitable because you have committed to pay 100 euros. But I want you to be a partner so that once the project has been developed, construction is finished, and we start producing, and we can see the true economics, we share the profits. And the way we share the profit is not by giving you dividends, because your client is not a shareholder. They get a discount on their price, on their electricity price. So at the end of the day, maybe they get 80 euros per megawatt hour. So you go and see them and say, okay, this is the best case scenario. If everything goes well, the energy cost for you should be 80. But in order to get the best terms for financing and for the debt, let's do a more conservative business plan. Let's put a price of 100. And because you're paying this extra 20, basically you're taking the same risk as an investor. You're taking the risk to put more money on the table with the expectation that the money will come back later if everything goes according to plan. And so now you have a very profitable business plan. You can raise funds, you can get some loans. You can ask the EPC company to do the same. Basically, you negotiate with this EPC company and you say, okay, how much will be the price for this plant? And they say, it's going to cost us €1 per megawatt hour. And you say, well, let me pay you 90 cents as cash and 10 cents you get equity. So now you have the EPC company, you have the client, maybe you have the investors, you have like all the stakeholders who are sharing some of the risk of the project, and they're sharing the benefit. So there's several benefits. One of them is that it's intrinsically a more profitable project. So the probability that it goes ahead is higher. And now you're not the only one carrying all the risks and the profits. All the stakeholders now are on the same boat as you.
Yeah, definitely. And for me, it totally makes sense because one of the approach that I'm exploring is to involve the commercial off-taker in the SPV, saying that maybe, I don't know, we have 1 million capex for the project. Let's say that the off-taker is ready to pay 30%, so 300K. And then we will involve him as a shareholder in the company. And I think the default risk will be reduced thanks to this approach because he will be involved in the project from the beginning. And I discussed this with several CFOs, and I think that they are considering these ideas because all parties will be aligned to this kind of project. And through a dedicated SPV, it will not appear directly on their balance sheets. Something that is very important for them also as well. So I think it could be a great combo.
Yeah. Another benefit that we did not discuss, but I think in the long term, this could be a very powerful selling point, is that we can build a standard legal framework with all of these contracts. And this will be developed using the current FlexUp approach, which is that we're building a library of standardized contract. It's open source in a way that basically all the templates that we produce are published. And we continuously update them by taking, feedback and best practice from all parties, so that when you go and see an off-taker, an EPC company, another partner, you can say, look, let's not waste time, 6 months negotiating a contract. We can just use the standard FlexUp legal framework. And if there's any specific parameters that we want to change or specific clauses that we want to discuss, you can always add them in the special conditions. But you don't have to go and negotiate all the 30 clauses that are standard and that sometimes the bank expect it. And this is one of my key difficulties when we were negotiating large power contract with the government, especially in Africa, is that they wanted us to sign contracts which we knew that they were not bankable. No bank would ever accept this. And we try to say, no, you can't have this or that in the contract because the banks will not finance it. And they say, oh, but we're the government, we decide. And I say, no, if no bank is going to fund this project, we're wasting time. We're spending months negotiating a contract, and then I'm going to spend 3 years developing it. And by the time it's ready to build, I go and see the bank, and the bank says, your contracts are not good enough. We're not going to fund the project. And that's one of the key problems that I've seen, is that every project developer has to reinvent the wheel and start from scratch. By having a third party build a library of standardized contract templates that have already been used and that have already been properly financed, then you can go and say, look, let's not reinvent the wheel here. We know that these contract templates are bankable. They've been used by dozens or hundreds, and maybe in the future, thousands of solar projects. Let's just focus on the business and not on the wording of the legal contract, because that's a problem that's already been solved. Okay. That's another benefit that you get from using the FlexUp approach, is that you benefit from this free library of contracts.
No, I'm totally aligned with it because one of the main bottleneck that we are observing on the ground is that on this particular market segment, which is a CNI segment, it's a very fragmented market in Africa, meaning it's a lot of small projects with small capex required for each project, and institutional fund or even financial partners, they don't want to get involved because the transaction cost is so high for a small project, and it's true that they are waiting until someone can, as you say, bundle those projects to create a portfolio of projects, and then they can somehow become much more interested by this project because the transaction cost, as you said, will be much more interesting. And it's true
Exactly.
that I think that this approach could be great.
Yes, standardization and so if you generate a portfolio of projects that are all structured in the same way, you have the same EPC player, and you have the same contracts, and you have the same type of clients, and as long as it's been properly developed and the contracts have been well written, then you have a very attractive portfolio from an investor point of view, right? Because you have risk mitigation from a technical point of view. You have a properly developed project with bankable contracts. That could be very attractive.
But it's true, one of the main issues that I'm facing is I need to finance the first project as soon as possible. So I'm in a situation where I'm not sure I want to wait until maybe we will reach 10 megawatt of project to get the financing. And we are exploring other source also of capital as well. For instance, private capital with high net value individuals who are located in mainly Abidjan and Ivory Coast, and it will enable us also to speed up the project. So, and the
Okay.
project, and we discussed
Now,
with several partners, and I think that it would be a go from their perspective to apply also this scheme.
okay. So sorry if I stay on this project, and we'll get to you, Jacobian, but this is what you just mentioned is super, super interesting. Again, speaking from experience, what we did when we created this joint venture with the solar power manufacturer, solar panel, is we started with one project and then another one, and he was funding the construction. By the time we had a whole portfolio of projects, we went to the banks, we got the loan for the whole project, and we went to the investors, and we got the investors to buy out the project.
Okay.
So the first person to fund the project, he was only funding the construction and startup phase. So the idea here is you find a group of high net worth individuals, you get them to fund on a 100% equity basis your first project. By the time you have a project, a portfolio of projects that are running, then you can refinance either the whole portfolio or a subset. That means that the investors are not taking let's say a 15% return on 30 years, which is a lifetime of the, but they're making, maybe they're making a 30, 40% return on 2 years. So the highest risk and the highest profit potential is to take the development risk, the construction risk, and the startup risk. Once the solar plant is operational, the risk that is still residual is very minimal. Okay, so you can refund the project on much better terms once you have the portfolio, at least part of a portfolio, already operational. That means that the early investors are taking more risk, but they're also getting much higher profit.
Okay, very interesting. And it's true that one point that we didn't mention is about the currency mismatch because in terms of source of capital also as well, we were considering bringing external international partners that would bring debt in euro or in dollars. And then when you finance those projects in Ivory Coast, the revenue that we will get from this project are in francs CFA. So there is also this legal part also to take into consideration if we do not go with high network value individual, which are based locally. It would be the ideal solution to have a local partner ready to finance the project because we will eliminate this risk. But if we are not able to finance this locally, we should potentially involve debt fund or investment funds coming from outside. And from a legal point of view and through FlexUp, we should take this into consideration and see how we manage.
Yes. And so I remember we already mentioned this during the interview. So let me reformulate one possible solution here. Is that, for example, the off-taker is paying in the local currency, right? The CFA franc.
Yeah.
So let's go back to the example where we say, we're going to sell you the electricity at 100 euros per megawatt hour. So let's say this is, I don't know, 60 francs per kilowatt hour, something like that, right? But you get a rebate of 20 euros per megawatt hour if we achieve the objectives of the business plan. So that your price will go down from 100 to 20, from 100 to 80. But the profitability of the project is calculated in euros. So now the off-taker is sharing the currency conversion risk with the investors.
Okay.
And that's something that would be difficult to do without FlexUp, because with the FlexUp system, you create the account, even if it's a sub-account within an SPV. You create the account for the legal entity that has all the projects in the Ivory Coast, and then you create a portfolio as a sub-account, and you say, this portfolio, we will do all the accounting in euro. Now, of course, most of the contracts will be in francs, but the app automatically converts all the credits and all the tokens in euros. So when it calculates the profit at the end of the year, it calculates profits in euros. And if the CFA franc has collapsed and the project is not profitable, then there's no money to distribute, or at least not enough. That means the off-taker doesn't get his 20%, 20 euros rebate in his price. So if the off-taker is a private company, they can't do much, but at least they share the risk. If the off-taker is a government, then the government maybe will intervene. Okay, let's move on here if you're okay, Stephen, and we can always go deeper once you want to move forward. So Jacobian, nice to meet you. Do you want to say a few words about what business you're operating in, or
Sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, it's not that interesting as the business of Stephen, I suppose. My husband and I were in an advisory, in leadership and organizational advisory. In every stage of a company, from startup to larger, there is a different kind of leadership necessary. First, it is the founder, and later on, and the business grows up, then there's more another kind of leadership required to bring the company to a next stage. And yeah, well, in that kind of business we are. And so we are here more like the professional advisor to startups and interesting in FlexUp, what it also could do for us as a professional advisor. How does that work, and what kind of risk am I taking? But that kind of questions are coming up to me. But I think FlexUp is a great platform for startups with all kind of resources to available for startups, which for otherwise not so easy available. So I think it's very interesting. But maybe you can.
I think this is a absolutely fantastic example, because this is probably where FlexUp can have the most impact, and very easily, in fact. So if I understand correctly, you're an advisor to companies, whether small ones or large ones, and you help them both on the strategy and on the organization, including facilitating and recruitment, right?
Exactly,
Especially
yes.
the management team recruitment.
Yeah.
So this is a fantastic example, and I'm happy that you're in this call so we can talk about it. But very often, companies have different needs at different stages of their development. So the very early startups, when you haven't yet created a company and you're just trying between the founders to find a way to split the equity. The problem is sometimes the founders, or you have several co-founders, they lock themselves into a fixed equity split from day one. Let's say we're 3 founders, we're going to have 33% each.
Yeah.
And that won't change unless we renegotiate. So maybe if you leave, I need to buy your shares, or if suddenly I work more than both of you guys, I will come and complain and say, this is not fair. I'm doing all the work. I only have 33% of the shares.
Yeah.
So FlexUp provides a way to calculate the contribution of each founders in a dynamic way. So basically, you earn your equity every month, and the more you contribute, whether it's in cash or in work, or maybe you bring more business than your other co-founders, then you get more equity. And this can change dynamically, and that means you don't need to have a fight. You don't need to renegotiate after 6 months when the situation is different from what you initially anticipated, right? So FlexUp creates very simple, very transparent, very dynamic way of reallocating the equity on the basis of how things actually evolve, and how much different co-founders contribute to the team. It also allows you to hire new people. Maybe 6 months later, they say, okay, we need a chief marketing officer, or now we need a CFO, or whatever.
Yeah.
I will bring the new people on board, and I can offer them the same type of package as the original founder. So the principle of FlexUp, again, is non-discrimination.
Mm-hmm.
There's no fundamental difference between the guy who started the company on day one and the guy who joined 6 months later. Because 10 years down the road, if they're still working together, okay, maybe one guy started earlier, maybe the first guy had the idea, but the other guy also put 10 years of his life in the company. And very often
Sorry.
Yes.
It's a kind of dynamic dilution system, equity-wise. So people come and go, and you have you bring more effort, some other less effort, and that's
Exactly.
the pot. But
Exactly.
you have one pot of shares, so just dilution.
Exactly.
And
Yeah, exactly.
Administrating that and registering that, or how does it work?
Exactly. We have a very simple system to calculate how much equity you earn. And then there's I'm not going to show it on the screen, but you can go into our sandbox. You can view the app in real time for some examples, and you can see the equity split changing over time. So instead of having a fixed pie where you just negotiate the percentage, it's like you have a piggy bank, and you just add coins. And the more coins you put in your piggy bank, the more equity you have. So in the FlexUp system, we never think about equity in terms of percentage, but in terms of value.
Yeah.
So the more I bring to the table, the more value I get. the more equity I get in value, not in percentage. You look at the value, okay? That allows you to hire talent even earlier. So this is a second use case is, let's say, 6 months down the road, 1 year down the road, the startup is already well structured. We're already doing business and we have, clear product and clients, but we're not yet generating cash. But now the business is grown, so I need to hire very experienced people. I need to hire a CFO. I need to hire a marketing manager. And these guys, and then I called Jacobian and I said, I need guys that are like top talent that are working in the biggest company. They make 10, 15,000 euros a month. I don't have that kind of money. There's no way I can pay that. I need these people, but I don't have the money to pay them. What can you offer me? And then you say, well, it's good you contacted me because we're FlexUp advisors and we know how to attract very competent profiles to your startup, and you will pay them not 100% cash, but a mix of cash and equity. Let's say you can afford to pay 5,000 euros a month, and the extra 10,000 euros a month, you give them as equity. So this new CFO, he's thinking, okay, I'm making 15,000 euros a month, super high salary, because I have this amazing experience and I worked in the biggest corporations. I bring a lot of value to the company, but I understand they don't have the money to pay me in cash. So they pay me a little bit in cash and the rest, I'm investing this in the business. And I know that I'm investing on the same terms as the other founders and the other employees and also the financial investors. So I'm not a second-class citizen. I'm just the same as everybody else. It's just that I came later. So the other guys already have equity, which is fair, but I will earn equity on the same terms as them. Okay. So that's kind of the second use case. The first use case is how do you structure the equity between the founders? The second one is how do you hire top talent when you're already growing, but you still don't have cash? And then the third one, when you're talking about larger organizations, how do you incentivize, motivate, retain your team? Sometimes in France, they encourage companies to give shares, real shares, right? But this can be complex to set up. Sometimes the owners, they don't want to lose control. They don't want to have 100 people in their general assembly every year. And sometimes from a tax point of view, it can be very costly to give shares initially because you need to pay tax on the share you give, even though you don't have money and they don't get any money. So
very complex.
it can be very complex. So FlexUp gives you a system that's super simple. You basically say, okay, guys, right now you're earning, I don't know, 3, 5, 6,000 euros a month. We're going to give you another extra 1,000 euros a month as a bonus, but this is paid in equity. So this will only become cash if we make money at the end of the year. And maybe we can put a 2-year vesting. So you only get this equity if you stay another 2 years in the company, but you give this 1,000 euros every month. So anytime they leave, they lose the equity for the last 2 years, but they keep the equity that they earned before. So it creates an incentive to stay in the company, but without a crazy punishment if you leave. Because in some startups, you have a 4-year vesting, you get all of your shares the day one. And if you leave before 4 years, you lose everything. And if you leave after 4 years and 1 day, you keep everything. So it creates a threshold effect that is super toxic. So with FlexUp, we try to avoid threshold effect. Everything should be like progressive. So that's kind of another use case that we discussed in a previous workshop to increase the retention and motivation of the employees. You can pay them a bonus in addition to the salaries they already have. And this bonus is paid in equity, which means that at the end of the year, when the company makes profit, they get a piece of the cake.
Very fair system.
Yeah. Now, there's many more things we could discuss because I already discussed it with Richard yesterday, but maybe it would be an overkill for a first call. So do you have any other questions, maybe, or on other ideas that you want to discuss?
Yeah, well, one simple question. I thought normally you need to go to the notaire, right, or the lawyer to who has the registration of all the equity. Is that not necessary here? Because
Right. So I think in the Netherlands specifically, you have a lot of paperwork to register new shares.
Very
And I think
costly
you
as
need to
well.
go, you need to go to the notary. In France, you don't need to go to the notary, but you still need to do a general assembly, a capital increase, and it can be a lot of work. So in the FlexUp system, what we call equity is actually a mix of credits and tokens, and it's just calculated in the app. So from a legal point of view, it's not a share in the company. From a legal point of view, it's a contract that basically says on this and that condition, you will get a bonus. So if my contract is an employment contract, the day my equity becomes payable, it will be a bonus on my salary, on my paycheck.
Okay.
And so the company will pay contributions like if it was a salary.
Yeah.
If I'm a freelancer or if I'm a consultant, then I have a contract that says, you get 3,000 euros a month cash, but that's what we call the firm. And then I get 1,000 euros of equity, but this equity doesn't go on my invoice because it's not paid.
Yeah.
But at the end of the year, when the company made profit and say, okay, we made a lot of money and now we're going to pay to all the people that own equity, we're going to pay 5 euros per token. Then I receive from the app a message saying, for this year, you receive, 10,000 euros of payments for your tokens.
For what it's a token
So
is worth at the moment.
it's the token system. So you can now send an invoice.
Yeah.
So because I'm a freelance, I'm going to send an invoice. If I was an employee, it would be on my paycheck.
Yes, of
So the
course.
FlexUp system allows basically a common remuneration system. So everybody from a financial point of view is on exactly the same platform, the same system, but they get paid from an accounting point of view in different ways. Maybe if I'm an employee, it's on my payroll. If I'm a freelance, it's an invoice. If I'm a shareholder, then it will be a dividend. And if I'm a client, I get a rebate. So as we discussed with Stephen, for the client, it's also, he gets equity, but actually he doesn't get equity. He gets in the contract something saying you will get a rebate at the end of the year if the project is profitable.
Yeah. Okay. Oh, now I got it. Yeah. So that actually also means that you don't have the risk of the startup because you're not actually having the equity. You have tokens which are reflecting the equity.
Sorry, you don't need to what? You don't need to?
You don't have the risks of the startup. So you don't bear
Exactly. Let's say you're a supplier or consultant or whatever, freelance and advisor.
Yeah.
You just have a normal commercial relationship with your client, but some of your price is paid at the end of the month when you send the invoice, and you get a potential bonus maybe one day if the company achieves certain thresholds. You're still a consultant and you just send an invoice.
Yeah. So the other risk is that you maybe never get paid.
Exactly. So you're from a financial point of view.
Yeah, of the startup.
Exactly. From a financial point of view, you're taking an investor risk. This is clearly you're taking the same risk as an investor. If the company goes bankrupt, you don't get paid. You invested money in a company, it went bankrupt, that's too bad.
Yeah.
But if the business is very successful, maybe you get maybe 10 times your money, right?
Yeah.
So let's say you hire this guy and you give him 10,000 euros a month of equity, and maybe 10 years later the equity is worth 10 times, and so he was actually making 100,000 euros a month.
Mhm.
He didn't know it yet.
No. That's a good surprise. Yeah. But
Yes,
the other way around is not possible. So yes, let's say it goes bad with a startup and it has a lot of debt and needs to pay off and it can't pay its own debt anymore. So it can never reflect to me as an advisor because
that's
I have
right.
a
That's right.
commercial relationship.
That's right. So in most cases, that's the same. That's also true for an investor. In most, depending on the type of company, but if you're in a limited liability company, LLC in the UK, or in France, Société à responsabilité limitée, the only risk that you take is the money you put in. If the company goes bankrupt and has millions of euros of debt,
Yeah.
that's not your problem as an investor.
Mhm.
It's the problem of the company, and if there's no money to pay the banks, then the banks don't get paid. That's it.
That's true.
But if you're in a partnership, then if the company goes bankrupt, the partners have to pay the
Yeah,
debt. It depends on the type of company. But
exactly.
certainly with the FlexUp system, you are just basically you're just a supplier if you're a contractor, and you
Yeah,
just risk not getting your bonus paid any
that's it.
ever.
Yeah, right. Okay, cool.
Now, so that's the benefit for the company, basically your client.
Mhm.
Now, the benefit for you as an advisor is that you can take an assignment or a mandate from a client that doesn't have enough money to pay you.
Yeah,
And then you can accept, if you believe in the client, if you're willing to take the risk, you can accept to be paid partly or fully in equity. So now you have equity from your client.
right.
And then your client says, okay, well, Jacobian, she's on board with me. Maybe instead of changing lawyer or advisor every year, I'm going to stick with Jacobian because she trusted in me, she invested in me. And also because I don't have the cash to pay the other advisor, I'm going to go with Jacobian because she's willing to be paid in equity. So if you're willing to take that kind of risk, maybe it's a good way to start a business relationship, a long-term
Yeah,
business relationship with clients. And you can, as an advisor, as a FlexUp advisor, once you understand how FlexUp works, you can offer your clients solutions that other advisors don't know. They don't have that, right? Unless they also learn about FlexUp and try to use FlexUp to help their clients, right? So there's like multiple benefits because there's a benefit for your clients and there's a benefit for you because with these tools, you can offer new solutions to your clients.
right. Cool. Maybe you should create like a kind of fund of advisors who are always available for your clients for the startups.
But that's the deal. That's why we say that FlexUp is not just an app, it's also an ecosystem with a network of partners.
Uh,
So when I know that you guys, Richard and you are in the FlexUp ecosystem, when I have my client, he says, I need to recruit CFO, I need to recruit an operations director. I'm going to call you first. I'm going to say, I have a client. Now, of course, within the FlexUp ecosystem, we have this system of commission. So if I introduce you a client, then you give me 5% of whatever you make with him, and vice versa.
yeah,
It's super transparent, right? It's published on our website. So it's a way of basically encouraging collaboration within the network.
yeah. Complete ecosystem. Very nice. I will talk with Richard about it to apply it to this FlexUp somehow. Yeah.
Okay, well, It was super interesting conversation, just as interesting as the solar conversation with Stephen. Okay, well, thank you so much for being in the call. And I look forward to hearing about you. And Stephen and Jacobian, feel free to reach out and let's have a one-to-one call to follow up on this. Okay?
Okay, with
Thank you,
pleasure.
Fabrizio. Thank
Thank
you.
you, Fabrizio.
Bye-bye. Thank you.
Okay, bye. Bye, guys.
Have a nice day.
Bye-bye.